This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this.
Greater Manchester Police. Every time you think it can't get any worse, you surprise us all again. And as for my brother Jamal, you know it's gone all wrong when a shadow government minister, one of the most powerful men in the land, is paying for Facebook ads.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very good evening. It is Sunday, the 3rd of July. My name is Raja Mia. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. I recommend you watch them before someone puts in another complaint and tries to get the next one pulled down and the next one pulled down. The best way of watching them is, of course, live and interacting with all of us here, all of the rabble. It's the best way of watching these transmissions. I don't even know where to begin this evening. So much has happened, but first of all, oh, I know where exactly I'm going to begin. I don't know this gentleman. Labour facilitated the rape and abuse of thousands of young girls. First they denied it, then they tried to hide it, and finally they blamed the victims. Never forget, never forgive. There's a step in there you missed, Mark, which is they tried to destroy the lives of those of us who stood up and faced them. They tried to destroy our lives. They tried to destroy the lives of our families. And not just the Labour Party. Greater Manchester Police are neck deep in this, as is the Crown Prosecution Service and the mainstream media. Every arm of what we would expect a Western liberal democracy to have checks and balances and keep each other accountable has failed in Oldham. The CPS, most senior prosecutors in the CPS, and I will name you. I've got to go and dig out the email correspondence I've had with you, whatever your name is at the CPS, but I will name you. Steve Watson, the new, Chief Constable. Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine, Detective Sergeant Christopher Dean, the new detective inspector for Oldham, Chris Bowen. All of them are complicit. The Oldham Times, the newspaper, the Oldham Times, the Oldham Chronicle, the Manchester Evening News, all of the local mainstream media, forget the nationals, the local mainstream media, all of them complicit. Amanda Chariton, leader of Oldham Council, the new leader of Oldham Council, hasn't learnt from the failings of her predecessors, Arood Shah and Sean Fielding. All of them are putting the Labour Party first and this cover-up first. Arood Shah famously said this motion will be voted down and the consequences were we voted her out. Sean Fielding claimed this barefaced lies. He has now fled the town and is standing in, or trying to stand in, Salford as a Labour Party councillor. And of course, Amanda Chariton is refusing to support calls of a public inquiry. Why would the leader of a council who has found out from a report that even though it's a cover-up and there's findings in it that are full of contradictions, it confirms the widespread and systematic grooming and gang rape of our town's children. And it's covered up, and we all know why it's covered up, because it seeks to protect a shadow government minister, Jim McMahon, who at the time was leader of the council. Those are the facts. During the time these systematic failings have been identified, the leader of Oldham Council was Jim McMahon, the shadow minister for farming. And all of these agencies interconnected, along with a group of Labour Party councillors who were sat in that chamber on Monday evening, who are, as the councillor Robert Barnes bravely pointed out, mates with daddy's mates of SHABIR AHMED. The ringleader of the Rochdale Grooming Gang has friends in Oldham Council, sitting at councillors. And for the last three and a half years, they've covered this up after we exposed it. Greater Manchester Police repeatedly have tried to arrest, well, they have arrested me, repeatedly tried to censor and silence me. The council have got themselves involved with Operation Hexagon, an unlawful police operation, attempting to shut all of us down. Many of you who dared voice concerns, the leader of Oldham Council, using his official capacity, went and tried to have you sacked from your jobs and your lives destroyed. And finally, we now have Andy Burnham, the man who wants to be Prime Minister. Not a chance, Burnham. Not a chance, because it doesn't matter what your metropolitan elite spin as their story. There is a story in our town, and this story will not go away. We will not be silenced. We will not be intimidated, and we are not for moving on. Who here is for moving on? Tell me, how many of you want to move on without holding those who failed our children to account? How many of you want to move on? I have a packed evening. I have something called, a working title called 9 Lies. There are 9 very, very specific lies in this report and through this process. And I'm working on it with a view of trying to get it published for the day of the next council meeting, which is a week on Wednesday. It's called 9 Lies, 9 Reasons Why. And it is very much focused on why there should be a public inquiry. I cannot believe that I am sat here outraged, not just at this cover-up report, but that Labour Party councillors, parents themselves, the leader of Oldham Council, Amanda Chariton, is a parent. I am gobsmacked that parents are attempting to block a public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. I just find that, of all of the things that have happened on this journey, this I find, it's beyond comprehension. Beyond comprehension. They want to prevent a public inquiry. Why would anyone want to prevent or block a public inquiry? Well, we'll find out a week on Wednesday, because the brave Failsworth independents, Brian Hoban, Mark Wilkinson and their team have, a team of 5 now, have put forward a motion demanding a public inquiry. And we will see, this town will see who supports that public inquiry and who attempts to block it. It's not a complicated vote. You either demand and support justice for all of our children, or you're part of the cover-up. Now, I don't know why does apprehension of using the term paedophile protector. I used it some time ago with a question mark in reference to Jim McMahon, the MP, and Sean Fielding, Sean Fielding, the leader of the council. I put a question mark after it. Paedophile protector, question mark. Now, I am very clear. And I'm happy to be arrested for this. I'm happy to be sued for this. Drag me through whichever court you want. But I am happy to hold the position that any councillor next week, a week on Wednesday, any councillor a week on Wednesday who is involved in either abstaining or voting against, or like a coward not turning up to the council meeting, can be described as a paedophile protector, because they will have protected the grooming gangs. So it's as straightforward as that. And I agree with Yvonne. One more time, the gallery needs to be full, and it needs to be full more so than the time before. This Monday that went, you know, we knew what it was going to be. And it was for an opportunity for us to stand up for ourselves and our children. But if you want to fight for our children, if you want to fight for justice, then that is a week on Wednesday. It's the 13th. If you want to fight for the future of the town, then that is Wednesday the 13th. If you find value in these transmissions, please like, please copy and share. Share onto your Facebook pages, share onto your Twitter pages, share into any WhatsApp groups you're involved in. Please share, and I'll have a sip of my coffee, give you a moment to perhaps even consider buying me a coffee, if that's at all possible, and I'll get on with the evening. Okay. My Vimto is here. It's right here. I know you can't see it, but this is my Vimto. And, sorry, I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty because I've stuffed my face at Montaz's. I got Mr. P kindly pick me up. So, Senor Pear picks me up, yeah? I'm stood outside my flat for 20 minutes waiting for Moib to pick me up. Oh, I have to say hello to my nephew. He uses his different name, Sarab. Mobby gave me a lift up. Mobby and I went to school together. He's a bus driver these days. And he's cooked me some food. So, He's between him and his mother, they cooked, his mum's my cousin, they cooked me some food, so I'm not got round to it yet, because Montaz, absolutely, I mean, it was a feast, wasn't it? And so well turned out. So well turned out. I think there was something like 500 people there, and there were people still queuing up, waiting for second sittings to eat. So, you know, it was nice to see. It was nice to see so many of my far-right racist friends. So many of my far-right racist friends. Although I did giggle when I walked in, and poor Brian Hoban and Mark Wilkinson are sat on the dais either side of Montaz on the top table, and then I couldn't help but burst out laughing at I think Montaz's brother-in-law, Afridge is called, saw my up. He wasn't interested in me. Shook my hand, said hello. Moyab, come on. And off Moyab marches, and I'm looking for a seat, thinking, where am I going to eat? I look up, and Moyab sat at the top table. You know, seats been prepared for him, and he's, you know, he's being fed. Oh, I was always one to be let in through the side entrance. The tradesman's entrance was, I know my role in life. Right. Thanks, Julie. Julie Hayward has just bought me some coffees. I don't know why it doesn't come up here anymore, Julie. I must have turned it off or something. I must have done something with the widget. I think it was making lots of noises, wasn't it? There you go. There's the link. Let's see if anything comes up. I have put up a crowdfunder. You'll have seen it. It is on the basis that every day you're in touch with me. Dozens of you are in touch with me every day. This, to all extents and purposes, has become a full-time job. It's not a full-time job I want, by the way, so we're very clear. It's not something I want. It's something that clearly needs to happen and needs to take place. And I was trying to work out what is a fair price to put against the cost of my time. And what I ended up with, and it wasn't an hourly rate or a daily rate. Well, I thought, hold on. The basic allowance of a councillor over a year is £10,100 and something £51. So I've put that down, and we'll see how far we get towards it. And we get there, we don't get there, we don't get there. But I think it's worthwhile putting down something as a target, because the reality is, well, you know what the reality is. You saw that on Thursday evening when the shadow minister used parliamentary privilege to name me as a far-right activist, as a spreader of hate and racism and disinformation. The consequence of that, and I can laugh it off, but the consequence of that is in the history books, because this is now in the parliamentary history books. It's in Hansard. I am listed alongside Hitler. I have been named as a shadow minister, and he's protected by doing this because he won't dare do this outside. I have been named as a far-right activist, as a racist, as a spreader of hate. And we can laugh. And I try to laugh, but the reality of this is that in the place I came from and the institution I valued. Thank you. In the places I came from and the institutions I valued, I am now disgraced. That's what he wanted. No one will ever touch me again. Thank you. No one will ever touch me again. I am, to all extents and purposes, unemployable. That is the price I paid this week. In dragging this out to where we have got it, the price I have paid is my career is over. It is as simple as that. And it was done in such a cowardly way by a man who wouldn't dare repeat any of these allegations outside. And the Manchester Evening News, who have been neck deep in this scandal from the beginning, went with this. And it's on purpose. You need to understand, this is on purpose. Former charity boss accused in Parliament of spreading hate, racism and disinformation in relation to child sexual abuse in Oldham, with my photograph. This is on purpose. Oldham Western Royton MP used parliamentary privilege, which means he's protected and he can say what the fuck he wants, to accuse Raj me of seeking to make financial and political gain. No, Sue, it's not that. He doesn't need to prove it. In the space I come from, because of what he's just done, my career has just been ended. And apparently, I am diverting focus away from justice for victims of abuse. So not only am I a spreader of hate, racism and disinformation, my actions are preventing justice. I'm getting in the way of justice for victims. And then he says a series of lies, and these are lies, that somehow I was involved in some child protection failings, serious failings. Not only are they not true, if they were true, Oldham Council, because Collective Spirit was a school in Oldham, Oldham Council would have to have opened an investigation into this stuff, and they haven't. Same with Manchester Council, and they haven't. These are just lies. And what I'm doing is dividing a town and responsible for the absence of trust. And this is what he says. And so the question is, for those of us that are genuinely determined to move forward and to repair the hurt, what are we going to do differently to create the environment where people can come together to work towards fighting the evil of child abuse? He's trying to rewrite history and present himself as a protector of children, and as though I was the one who was responsible for failing children. And where their own report was forced to admit, in the small print, forced to admit that racism, the fear of the far right, was one of the key reasons why they kept this from you and I. They're now claiming I am a leader of the far right. Do you know what should have happened? And this is when it's not angry. I'm saddened. And perhaps I am more experienced in this field and shouldn't have these expectations of others. But I've never worked that way. I've always believed the best of people. And that they will do the right thing no matter what. And sadly, too often I'm let down, but I will not change that belief, because when I've seen it work, it's transformational. It's life-changing and community-changing, nation-changing. So we'll take 100 slaps for the chance of it coming right once. What should have happened when Jim McMahon announced his adjournment debate wasn't a victim of child sex exploitation, Sam, Sophie, in that report, but she's declared herself, and they all refer to her as Sam again. So I'll give her the respect of calling her by her real name. What shouldn't have happened was a young woman writing to every MP, outraged at the report, making reference to Jim McMahon as a liar and him and his council corrupt. It should not have been left to a victim of child sexual exploitation to desperately write a letter to MPs trying to draw attention to the truth. It should have come from the opposition parties. Now, I don't expect the Lib Dems to do it, but it should have come from the Conservatives. This is a Conservative government, and the Conservatives in Oldham and Saddleworth should have written to the government minister and said, Jim McMahon is doing this. This is the truth. It's called a briefing paper. It would have took me an hour to write. I would have told them the truth of what had happened, and it should have come from the Oldham and Saddleworth Conservatives. And instead it didn't. Instead, the Oldham and Saddleworth Conservatives have made massive gains in this town off my sacrifices and the sacrifices of my people. And when the moment came for them to stand up, genuinely stand up, not just make the most of it in a council chamber, but genuinely stand up, what they had to do was write a briefing paper to central government, to their own ministers. They controlled the government and made them aware of what was really going on and what is really going on with this report. Not only did they not do it then, when they had the chance, they've not done it now, and they won't do it now because they're too busy squabbling amongst themselves. The leader is on holiday. Graham Sheldon is on holiday. He was just over an hour or so away by car and refused to come back for the meeting. Pam Byrne, if she meant what she said about an independent inquiry, when she spoke on behalf of the Conservative group, they all knew about the adjournment debate. Why didn't they write to the minister? One, they don't mean what they say to us. Two, they're lazy and couldn't be bothered. Or three, they don't know how to. And the consequence of that is McMahon got away with it because a Conservative minister got up and confirmed her support, or the government's support, for the report. That's right. The Conservative minister got up and confirmed the government's support for the report. A report that's full of holes, full of lies, full of inconsistencies, and seeks to cover up the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. Now, I'm not blaming Lewis Quigg, Dave Arnott, and I'm definitely not blaming Robert Barnes. But who is in control of the opposition there, lads? Who is in control? When I, and those of you who joined me earlier today, at Montaz's place, and you saw the hundreds outside, and I'll talk about that later. But there was a rule we grew up by, and it's how we got out of where we got out, and it's why I'm here now talking to you lot. There's a rule. If all other rules are disregarded, this one isn't. If they come for one of us, they come for all of us. It's a simple rule. If they come for one of us, they come for all of us. And yet, when they had the chance to stand up, not just beside me, because the consequence of what McMahon said isn't just on me. If I'm spreading hate and racism, the people who are listening to me are also complicit and implicated. They had a chance and they refused to act. Now why? What's the point of voting Conservative and having links to a party in government if you're not willing to engage and use your networks and resources? What's the point? And they were there for the taking. They were there for the taking. The only person sat next to Jim McMahon was a very uncomfortable looking Debbie Abrahams. Not a single other Labour Party politician came and sat beside them. Even Angela Rayner, who had signed that stupid letter when the CSE report was released, that has been ridiculed and condemned across this land. Even she hadn't rocked up. It was Jim McMahon with a very uncomfortable looking Debbie Abrahams. So come on. Mate, of course I'm working. You need to stop listening to these idiots, because the income I generate through this is work. I declare this. He's gone for me for 5 years. Everywhere he's gone, he's failed. It's because I'm clean. It's because I operate in a very clean way. And no, mate, I can't go for him because of parliamentary privilege. He could have stood up there and said, I have sex with Alsatians. He would have been protected. It's a complete abuse of parliamentary privilege, but he abused it. Not a single Labour Party politician from anywhere else in the land stood by Jim McMahon. Everyone who's been briefed on the report in the Labour Party knows it's an attempt at a cover-up, and that the shadow minister is on the verge of ending his career, and this is just absolute desperation in the end. This is like a, if I'm going down, I'm going to destroy his life sort of act. And I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care what he said about me. If those who had benefited from the sacrifices I continue to make has simply wrote a briefing paper to their own government, to their own party, and outlined why this assurance review is not fit for purpose. I'll go through my 9 reasons why. Please bear with me. I'm just going to have a drink. If you haven't pressed like, and most of you haven't, there's 183 people watching this. If you haven't pressed like, please do so. And I'll just have a drink, and we'll get on with this evening's transmission. Okay. So according to this man, the Shadow Minister, he's concerned that I will undermine the report. Well, watch me undermine the report. One. The Mayor Andy Burnham. Now, Andy Burnham is yo-yoing around this report. We can't work out whether it's his report or not. Remember, he yo-yoed in the meeting? Here we go. First of all, let's clearly demonstrate he claims responsibility for this report. This was a tweet he put on 10:33 a.m. yesterday morning. The only reason there is a major police investigation into CSE in Oldham is because of the report I commissioned. Black and white there, the report I commissioned. The first thing Andy Burnham did when launching the report was he thanked Sean Fielding and Arood Shah. Andy Burnham attempted to rewrite history by claiming this report was only done because of the actions of the Labour Party in terms of its former two leaders, Sean Fielding and Arood Shah. Everyone who's followed this knows this to be a lie, to be an outright lie. This report was forced on the council, and it was forced by the people of the town. So there you go. Andy Burnham is responsible for this. And he started off by lying, by saying this report came about because of the actions of the council. They wanted this. They did not want this. Let's get this very clear. They did not want this. They were brought to this place kicking and screaming. As for claiming it is, that's just arrogance, isn't it? It's just outright arrogance. The only reason there is a major police investigation. The only reason there's a major police investigation. Of course, that major police investigation he refers to, Operation Sherwood, one of its first actions was to attempt to intimidate and silence a victim. One of the first actions of Operation Sherwood was to contact a victim and attempt to intimidate and silence her. But there's more to Andy Burnham and what's gone on here. And it gets to the heart of why this review is not fit for purpose. Mr. Burnham said, we'd wanted to get it out this month, this is November, but at the same time, given the nature of what's in it, we can't cut across due process. We can't publish a report that factually won't stand scrutiny. Well, this report doesn't factually stand scrutiny. That's by the by. This is the bit that I find outrageous. The mayor explained that victims specifically asked for such reports to not be released in December, as it is in the run-up to Christmas. Mr. Burnham said often the call from victims is that it's not published at that time with Christmas coming. The inference from what Andy Burnham said in his mayor's question time in Oldham, that was reported in all of the newspapers, is that the review team, his review team, are speaking to victims. And the victims did not want the report released before Christmas because of how it makes them feel over, a special period. That's right, isn't it? I'm not mistaken there. The inference from that is that they've been speaking to victims, and one of the reasons they've not released it is because victims have told them not to release it over Christmas. We now know that at that point in time, not a single victim had been spoken with. His review team had not spoken with a single victim. We know that as a matter of fact. We know that as a matter of fact. Not a single victim had been spoken to, yet he's implying that it's victims that have told him not to release the report at Christmas. So at best is misleading, at worst is just deceiving. It's an outright lie. I believe him is lying. So the man who's responsible is rewriting history as to how this investigation, this assurance review came out. Apparently it's what Oldham Council wanted. And then secondly, he's claiming that victims, or is inferring that victims have been part of the process. March 2022, just before the election period was starting, Oldham CSE delayed further due to significant additional evidence. New significant evidence has been provided to a review examining allegations of child sex exploitation in Oldham, further delaying its publication. Mr. Burnham subsequently stated that there would be a short delay in the release of the report while people, including victims, were given more time to say everything that they wanted to say. Mr. Burnham said that the review team would now be taking additional victim testimony. Have a look. Right here. Will now be taking additional victim testimony, which could lead to further examination of case files and other interviews. You can see it there. Burnham is claiming that this delay announced here of significant additional evidence is a consequence of giving victims more time to say everything they wanted to say, and that that his review team will now be taking additional victim testimony. It's a lie. Taking additional victim testimony. Taking additional victim testimony means that they've already taken victim testimony previously. That's what the word additional means. He is claiming that his review team are now taking additional victim testimony. The truth is that this makes reference to the only time they took victim testimony, and that was Sam. And Sam went to Maggie Oliver, and Maggie Oliver bypassed the framework of which his assurance review was set up and went directly to Newsom and Ridgway. There was no additional victim testimony. It was the only victim testimony. The Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is caught lying in a child sex exploitation investigation. The systematic grooming and gang rape of hundreds, if not thousands, of working class white girls in Oldham has been covered up in this process, and at its heart is the Greater Manchester Mayor. Now, either he was lied to when he made this statement, or he is just lying to the people of his town. It's there in black and white. I'll put it back up. It's there in black and white. Mr. Burnham subsequently stated there would be a short delay in the release of the report while people, including victims, were given more time to say everything they want to say. But in a statement released on Tuesday, March the 8th, Mr. Burnham said that the review team would now be taking additional victim testimony. Additional victim testimony. Do you see? So, number one, the person in charge of the review team, of this assurance review, the person in charge of this assurance review, he's claimed himself is responsible for it, is lying to the public. Now, he's either lying to the public because he's a liar, or he's lying to the public because he's been lied to. How does this assurance review stack up? How does this assurance review stack up if the mayor has been confirmed as a liar? the want to be Prime Minister of this country is neck deep in this scandal, because he's been suggesting throughout, claiming throughout, I would say, that victims are being spoken with. And this review would have been published without having spoken to a single victim. If it had not been for Maggie Oliver, and that's when one victim got in. At the press conference, there was outrage from another victim who was led to believe she would be in the review, and she wasn't. And you've seen what Child A that I've put up has done. There's other children who've come forward, young women who have come forward. They came forward here last week. Others have heard some of the harrowing testimony. They've all been prevented from testifying. The very case studies they've used, the young people have been prevented from testifying. If you're finding value in this transmission, please press like, please share, please consider financially supporting someone whose career is to all extents and purposes over. What sort of job can a racist get? What could I do? Number 2. Reason number 2. Yeah, it's exactly that, isn't it, Debbie? You can see. Number 2. And I'm cutting out some of the middle words, but this is word for word, yeah? If it was written up, there'd be some ... dots in the middle. Oh. Number 2. Malcolm Newsom stood up and said they'd concluded, "We have been provided with no evidence to suggest a cover-up. We have been provided with no evidence to suggest a cover-up." And the key words to take out of that is, we have been provided. So who was responsible for providing them with evidence? The council and the police. Those were the only two groups responsible for providing them with evidence. Now, there were some witnesses. Outside of that, they weren't the victims, because we now know they never, interviewed any victims apart from Sam when that was forced. And that, by the way, was proven to be a cover-up. But we'll get to that, which shows Newsom and Ridgways are either liars or why do some of you buy into this expert nonsense and that their reputations are beyond question? Their reputations are ruined as a consequence of this review. Their reputations are ruined as a consequence of this review. We have been provided with no evidence. Okay. So the evidence they got from the witness was a man called Huey MacDonald, a politician. So he would know all about political cover-ups, wouldn't he? On the basis that he was a 25-year councillor. And in terms of his honesty and integrity, for over 30 years he was a senior magistrate in this town. So his honesty is beyond reproach. And his political knowledge has got to be accepted as, it has significance. It has gravitas. Newsom and Ridgway aren't politicians. What would they know about political cover-ups and what one looks like? Huey MacDonald gave testimony for 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours. it's redacted to something like 2.5, 3 pages. 2.5, 3 pages it's redacted to. And those pages it's redacted to, Hughie MacDonald refused to sign off. So the very councillor who could have proven and had proven a political cover-up, his testimony was altered by Newsom and Ridgway. And then what they put in the report was so far removed from the truth that Hughie MacDonald refused to sign it off. So how was there not a political cover-up? Yeah, do you see? Look, gets worse. It gets worse. What Sam is saying there is that the investigation was carried out by Newsom and Ridgway, and the paperwork that Newsom and Ridgway got from GMP and Oldham Council was redacted. They only saw the truth. They only saw the truth because of the paperwork provided by Sam. That's what she's saying. They only saw the truth because of the paperwork she provided. Otherwise, Ridgway and Newsom, and this isn't accidental. This structure, this mechanism, this flow chart, think of it as a flow chart, was set up on purpose this way. Remember, the council set the terms of reference. The very organisation being investigated decided what could be investigated and how it could be investigated and when it could be investigated and who by. So let's carry on with Sam's stuff. So Hughie MacDonald gave testimony of a political cover-up and Newsom and Ridgway refused to consider it. There's something specific in this report about the Home Affairs Select Committee. And you've got to read between the lines because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't stack up. Keith Vaz, as chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, wrote to Jim McMahon and copied in the chief executive at the time. All reference of that letter going to Jim McMahon has been taken out of that report. And the response to the Home Affairs Committee, which The Guardian run a front page article, by the way, claiming that officers and politicians, well, officers, people had lied. So people from the council had lied to the Home Affairs Select Committee. This is criminal action. This is criminal action. Lying to the Home Affairs Select Committee in this way is criminal. And they're claiming that those lies had nothing to do with Jim McMahon. The letter from the Home Affairs Committee went to the leader of the council, who was Jim McMahon. And the lies in response from the council have somehow now got nothing to do with Jim McMahon. Why is that letter that went from Oldham Council back to the Home Affairs Select Committee not being published in the appendices? Why does Jim McMahon not officially, instead of ranting and raving at me, why is he not confirming something very straightforward? Was he aware of the letter? Clearly was, because the letter went to him. Was he aware of the response of the letter? And if he wasn't aware of the response of the letter, well, that's incompetence. And if he was aware of the response of the letter, then he was aware that that response was lies. Who wrote that response and who did it pass by before it went back? Why are those names redacted? Because what's took place there is criminal. What's took place there is criminal, and at the heart of it is a political cover-up, because the Home Affairs Select Committee is political. It's a political body. It's made up of government ministers and senior ministers from opposition parties. They wrote to Jim McMahon in his capacity as leader of Oldham Council, and they were lied to. Now, who lied to them? Who lied to them? Sorry, I don't know who's phoning me. Someone, I get wound up with my friends who phone me on a Sunday night because they know I do this on a Sunday night, so I'm not sure why. Never mind. Who lied? It's Montaz's brother phoning me. Who lied to the Home Affairs Select Committee? Was it the Chief Executive? And if so, he needs to be hauled in and asked on oath. Was the leader of the council aware of the lie? Or was the response from Jim McMahon? And if the response was from Jim McMahon, who's now a shadow minister, then he should be put in prison. There's no ambiguity. If the response was from Jim McMahon, the shadow minister, he should be put on trial. A politician, an MP, lying to the Home Affairs Select Committee. He was leader of the council then, so he wasn't an MP, but still a senior political position, leader of the council. If he's found to have been in any way involved in lying to the Home Affairs Select Committee, and remember, the lie is confirmed. The lie to the Home Affairs Select Committee is confirmed in this report. So who was involved in those lies? Paul Entwistle, I'll give him his proper name. Paul Entwistle was the borough solicitor at the time. Who was involved in the lies? Please bear with me. I am finding this painful this evening. For a number of reasons, I am finding this painful. So please just bear with me. So I've demonstrated two clear areas where there is clear evidence of a cover-up. A political cover-up. They claimed, Ridgway and Newsom claimed, that email that started it all with Kevin Fitzpatrick was not a cover-up. They've claimed it wasn't a cover-up. There was no collusion there. Let me bring something up. It'll take me a moment. Bear with me. I just want to bring something up. I'll play the music for you. Chat amongst yourselves. Or, if you haven't, press like. Maybe take a moment to support me. Just give me a moment. Okay. Sorry about that. You all here? .93 in the report, page 102, if anyone's interested. We have been provided with a copy of an email sent by Senior Communications Officer A to Chief Executive A on the 23rd of October. Senior Communications Officer A is a man called Carl Marsden. Carl Marsden now works in Oldham College. I do not believe any child in Oldham College is safe from child sex exploitation. If Senior Communication Officer A is Carl Marsden, who now holds down a job at Oldham College, then if I had my daughter in Oldham College, I would be pulling her out straight away. There is not a chance in hell my child would be going to Oldham College. I do not believe it to be safe. If they employ people like Senior Communication Officer A, then they will be covering up child sex exploitation in that college. Carl Marsden's wife was a senior reporter at the Oldham Chronicle at the time, and she now works for Angela Rayner. So let's put that in context before we continue. This is what the council were forced to share. After a series of phone calls and extremely robust conversations with journalist A, that's Kevin Fitzpatrick, he has now backed down and agreed to completely drop the stories on A, redacted as not within our terms of reference. I want you to bear that in mind. They are clearly saying, Ridgeway Newsmen are saying they redacted that because that is not in their terms of reference, right? And Councillor V, so that's Hughie MacDonald. Also, after some fact-finding with Chief Inspector A, that's Chief Inspector Hayden, convinced him. So the council's communication A, the communication officer A, has convinced the BBC there is no issue with private members' clubs in Oldham. All premises referred to in that infamous email are now out of operation, and we monitor them every week. In comparison with other neighbours across Lancashire, we simply don't have a problem. He has now also dropped that story. It has taken nearly 2 days, but killing all three is a right old result in the end. P.S. In case you didn't know, we've also won Best City in North West in Bloom again today. Convinced the BBC there is no issue with private members' clubs in Oldham. Ridgeway and Newsom confirm, and this is in the small print. Do you see how you've got to go looking in the small print? It was an overstatement. That means it was a lie to suggest that there was no issue with the private clubs and that all the ones referred to in the leaked email were out of operation. Only 3 weeks earlier, an intelligence report has identified that messenger subjects were still frequenting AC, Cluts and Oasis. So three grooming gang shisha bars were still in operation at the time this was this went out. It was an outright lie. It was a cover-up. Now, if that is not a cover-up, what is? How is that not collusion? And how can this senior communications officer A send this out without the knowledge of the leader of the council? And yes, Sally, it's okay because we've won Northwest in Bloom. Here is outright evidence in this report, and it's hidden. If you just read the executive summary, you'd not get any of this. It has taken nearly 2 days, but killing all three is a right old result in the end. He's celebrating that they've covered up the grooming and gang rape of our town's children by claiming all premises referred to in that infamous email are now out of operation. You can see it here. And Ridgway and Newsman confirm it was an overstatement. Why did they use the word overstatement? They confirm it was a lie. They confirm it was a lie. So there's no ambiguity. Senior Communication Officer A was Carl Marsden. He moved on to take a role at Oldham College. My understanding is still there. His wife is a woman called Dawn Marsden. At the time, she worked at the Oldham Chronicle as their chief reporter. When she lost her job there after the newspaper went bankrupt following printing false allegations against Kaiser Ehrman, she wrote the story, by the way. She became personal assistant for Jim McMahon when he became MP. Dawn Marsden, the wife of Senior Communication A. Carl Marsden, was rewarded with the role of PA for Jim McMahon when he became MP. She now works for Angela Rayner. My name is Raja Mia. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. It is true that I once used to advise the government, regardless of what they say. Once I used to put my skills to advise the government, and I think you can see why. I think you can all see why. I think you can all see why one of the most powerful politicians in this country has used parliamentary privilege to attack me and lie about me and try and... I don't know what he's trying to do to me. My town. If you're finding value in this transmission, please like, please share. The likelihood is it will be taken down. We are fighting very, very powerful people. There is a council meeting on Wednesday the 13th. I normally pick my daughter up from school. Those of you who know me know that I treasure the limited time I have with my daughter. I have spoken to her and told her I cannot pick her up on the 13th because other people's children need my help. I'm sure I will not be the only one who gives up and makes sacrifices to make that meeting on the 13th. There you go. Thank you very much. Journalist A's recollection of the conversation was somewhat different. I recall Karl Marsden saying they are all closed down now, so the issue has gone away, and I wasn't happy with that, and we still hadn't addressed whether these places had been active places of concern for CSE. We now know they were, because we now know that police officers have testified that they saw children being dragged by the scruff of the neck off the streets and dragged into these places. Chief Inspector A met with the independent investigator considering the standards complaint against Hughie MacDonald. The investigator quoted Chief Inspector A, so this is interesting. It's not that Chief Inspector said this, it's that the standards complaint investigator, the person from the council, quoted the Chief Inspector to say this. I don't believe the Chief Inspector said this, and they don't either. So they're claiming, the council are claiming, Chief Inspector A said that shisha bars are no longer an issue in Oldham. None are open. The premises have generally been turned into living accommodation. Blah, blah, blah. Gone. Yeah, no longer an issue. 23rd of November. Have a look. 23rd of November. The council investigators claiming this is how they got rid of Hughie MacDonald. This is how they got rid of Hughie MacDonald. He's stirring shit. There's nothing to see here. December 2013. Sorry, let me just fix that. Don't like that colour. November 2013. They claim that. In December 2013, Operation Waterloo was commenced by a detective inspector and detective sergeant aiming to disrupt CSE hotspots. Attracts young people, sexual predators, shisha bars, honeypots for vulnerable young people. Messenger team are aware of a number of these premises. Very little intelligence. The detective inspector, unnamed, and the detective sergeant, unnamed, sufficiently concerned to launch Operation Waterloo, which confirms that everything that Oldham Council is claiming no longer exists, still does exist. And there is the cover-up. Right there is the cover-up. It's not the only cover-up, by the way. Right there is the cover-up. Right there is black and white, clear evidence of the cover-up involving senior council officers. And you're telling me that the leader of the council, at this time the leader of Oldham Council was Jim McMahon, he was not aware. He was aware enough to suspend Hughie MacDonald, wasn't he? He was aware enough to suspend Hughie MacDonald. So we've now got 3 examples of clear evidence of a cover-up. I've not got to the main one yet. Those weren't even the main ones. The main example of a cover-up is SHABIR AHMED, the ringleader. Thank you. The ringleader of the Rochdale Grooming Gang worked for Oldham Council for 18 years. All this time when I was raising it, they denied it. They refused to answer questions on it. They leaked information that he might have worked for a short while. Remember those stories that Charlotte Green published on behalf of the council? Charlotte, I know you watched this. How do you feel, sweet? I read your post about how you'd been sexually assaulted, Charlotte, and it upset me. It upset me that something had happened to a young woman like you. It genuinely upset me. How do you feel, Charlotte, writing these lies and covering up for these people? Why? Is it worth it, Charlotte? Do working class girls from my town not matter? Are they a price worth paying for your career? Or for the Labour Party? Is this a price? Is this an exchange worth that, you know, is worth? You've seen that we now know the truth about SHABIR AHMED. He worked for the council for 18 years. Investigations against him were inexplicably closed down. That's what this report says. Inexplicably closed down. When the police should have reported it, things weren't missing. When the council should have reported it, things weren't missing. You know why? Because he was powerful. He was being protected. Are we to believe it was mistake after mistake after mistake? No. He was politically connected. He was no different than Jimmy Savile. "18 years. "18 years. Sorry, that's another friend of mine trying to call me. Guys, I'm going to get upset with you. That's all right, I'm going to get upset with my friends because I've been doing this for the last 3 bloody years. They know. And they know what it takes out of me. This isn't me, by the way. This isn't me. Moyib is the limelight guy. Some of my other friends are far more flamboyant. I'm the guy who sits there in the corner quietly. I do my work. I turn up to the places. I smile. And that's it. I don't speak at events. I don't do any of those things. I genuinely find this difficult every time I do this. SHABIR AHMED seconded from the council to the Pakistani Community Centre. What that means is the council hire someone and they hand them over, loan them to the Pakistani Community Centre. In order to loan them to the Pakistani Community Centre, a service level agreement would have to have been signed. And the Pakistani Community Centre would have to have been sending back reports as to what the council were funding that staff member for SHABIR AHMED. The Pakistani Community Centre had councillors who sat on its management committee. It was also funded independently by Oldham Council. So there were checks and balances there, supposedly. And councillors sat on its management committee also. SHABIR AHMED had his order books at the Pakistani Community Centre, and Pakistani men were lining up to book children, to groom, to rape. They were lining up. Their welfare needs involved the raping of children. And that was being facilitated by, no. That was being funded by Oldham Council. Oldham Council went one further than anywhere else in the country. We know in other parts of the country that children were groomed and gang raped and they were failed. We know those failings were covered up, and we know the implications of politicians and the roles of senior politicians and senior police officers in that. We know all about that. In Oldham, we went one further. We funded it. We funded the grooming gangs. In Oldham, the council funded the grooming gangs. Now you can say, oh, it was done unknowingly, but how do you know it was done unknowingly? Because from where I'm sat, it wasn't done unknowingly. And if it was done unknowingly, how many people failed in their duties? Thank you, Teresa. And the report's forced to conclude that if the council and the police had done their jobs, then SHABIR AHMED could have been stopped before he went on to commit further offences. It's in the report. It's in the assurance review. Yet when the MPs for this town stand up, they don't speak of the horrors. They don't use that parliamentary time to speak of the horrors and the failings. Forget that. He's not even apologised. They've not even apologised. Now, I can get Debbie Abrams not apologising, even though she called me a liar and tried to have me falsely arrested. I get that. But the leader of Oldham Council, throughout this scandal that I'm sharing with you, the person in charge of the council was Jim Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon, MP for Oldham, West and Royton. He was in charge of the council. I want you to take you back to this page as to the political cover-up. I just want to finish on this bit. And I'm only up to 2 of 9. Sorry, here we go. I've cleared the page because I just want to highlight this. They've redacted something as it's not within their terms of reference. That's what Newsman and Ridgway have said there. These are the terms of reference. Published on the 8th of January 2020. Yep. So the general scope of the terms of reference has 3 elements to it. First, four elements. But first of all, it sets up the timeline between 2011 and 2014. And concerns expressed on social media. So this is me. And the concerns are that statutory agencies were aware of this abuse. They failed to respond appropriately to safeguard their children and covered up these failings. That's the scope of the review. That's the terms of reference. And then they go specifically into the allegations, the areas of concerns. Shisha bars, children's homes, taxi services, Sophie's case, Sam's case, SHABIR AHMED, ignore that, that's after going after me, Operation Hexagon. There's nothing in the scope or the specific concerns in the terms of reference that puts any responsibility on Newsom and Ridgway to determine whether or not it was a political cover-up. It is outside of the remit. It is not in the terms of reference and it is outside of the remit, and here they are on matters elsewhere, clearly aware that if something is outside of the terms of reference, they're going to exclude it. So why are they drawing conclusions that it wasn't a political cover-up when determining whether it was a political cover-up or not was not in their terms of reference? Why? And no, Pauline, no schools, no youth clubs. Do you see? Can you see what's taking place here? This report is not worth the paper it's written on. And Jim McMahon, the MP, wants you and I and everyone else to move on, otherwise we're far-right racists. We're undermining the report. By me doing this, and I've been doing this tonight for what, the best part of 2 hours now, apparently I'm spreading hate and racism. By doing this, I'm spreading hate and racism. By painstakingly analysing this report line by line the way I have and drawing out inaccuracies, lies, whatever phrase you want to use. Apparently this is me spreading disinformation. Ridgway and Newsom concluded that they have not been provided with any evidence to suggest that there was a cover-up. How are we feeling? Here for a bit more? If we are, I need to fill this up. If not, I'll bid you good night and phone back one of my friends, Bertie, and shout at him. I won't shout at him. Guys, I don't make this up as I go along. So please, I sit there hours beforehand and try and work out I'm a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. Drawing conclusions to say it wasn't a political cover-up, it was not part of their terms of reference, it had nothing to do with where the evidence went, Pauline. You up for it, John? Yeah. Let me fill my coffee up, Fimto, and I'll come back in a couple of minutes. Carl Marsden, Senior Communications Officer A, involved in helping cover this up, as confirmed in this report as being a liar. That's what I take from that. My mate Mobby has always been better with his selection of words. Ridgway and Newsom, two bell ends. Yeah, I think you're right, mate. I think you're right. Very good evening for those of you who are joining us late. With 2 hours, give or take, into our transmission. My name is Raj Amir. These transmissions are being attacked. Every transmission is being reported to YouTube with a view of them going down. I'm trying my best to keep going. On Facebook, I am being branded as encouraging terrorism and inciting violence. I am a decorated anti-racist with a 25-year career in public service. This is not a fight of my choosing. I'm not sure where Warren Bates is this evening. And as one of my friends earlier said, why is Hughie MacDonald not saying anything? I think they come from a different generation. No. So let me explain the difference between a public inquiry and an assurance review. In a judge-led public inquiry, they send their own people in to look at the evidence. And secondly, they call witnesses and they cannot refuse. In a public inquiry, when public officials and politicians and police officers are called to give testimony, they cannot refuse. Here you'll see that many of them refused or just didn't reply. They can't do that. They cannot do that. Why would you want, after what I've just exposed now, Amanda Chadderton? I know you watch these transmissions, Amanda. I know all of my former friends in the Labour Party watched them. After what I've just exposed, is Jim McMahon worth you losing your, not just your career over, but being remembered in this town as complicit in the cover-up of grooming and gang rape of children? Forget your career. Is that what you want to be remembered as? Another political leader who was complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of the town's children. Why else would you block a public inquiry? Why else would you fail to support one? We know why Abdul Jabbar would. We know why many of the Asian councillors there would. Barrelgate Bashforth, Marie Bashforth. Why would you want to block a public inquiry? Why would you want to block a public inquiry? Are the children of our town not worth the truth? What do we actually mean by justice? I know what the Labour Party want to mean by justice, and Jim McMahon and what's his name, Andy Burnham want, and Debbie Abrams want. They want this sudden shift to focus on the victims and let's go after the perpetrators. We're not there. We don't see that as something that is at the expense of going after those in the council, the politicians and the police officers who covered this up and facilitated the gang rape of our town's children. Come on, Barrelgate. I ridicule you, but I don't think you're a bad man. I don't. I think you're a dodgy councillor and I think you're full of shit. But fundamentally, I don't think Bashforth is a bad man. Why then did you sit on your hands in that council chamber whilst all this played out? And why are you and your friends, Peter Dean, come on, why are you and your friends willing to fail our town's children and be complicit in this cover-up? Who are the Labour Party councillors? Let's bring them up. Just give me a second. Let's bring them up. Riaz Ahmed, he wasn't at the meeting. Shoaib Akhtar, I class Shoaib as my friend. Come on, Shoaib. Why are you blocking a public inquiry? Mohan Ali, Mohan wants me to stop picking on him. He's gone to Montaz and said, can we do anything with Raja so he doesn't mention me? Mohan's older brother, I know. He's a decent lad. Mohammed Alias, you're not involved in the Pakistani Community Centre, aren't you, Mohammed? Surely you want your name clearing as though you had nothing to do with this. Marie Bashforth, Stephen Bashforth, Ros Birch, Barbara Brownridge, Amanda Chadderton, leader of the council, Dr. Chauhan, Zahid Chauhan, Angela Cosgrove, Sholver. It was the children of Sholver who were groomed and gang raped, Angela. Peter Dean, Waterhead, same up there, Count Hill School, Peter Dean. You're a councillor at the time as well, Peter. Elaine Gary, Failsworth, too busy calling my friends in Failsworth racists. Chris Goodwin, Jenny Harrison, George Hume, Fida Hussein, come on Fida, Sajid Hussein, Nyla, I've never said a bad word about you, Nyla, you're a mother, come on Nyla. Why would you prevent or try and vote against a public inquiry into the cover-up, now, clear cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children? Why are all of you, Javed Iqbal, Nazrul Islam, well, he's a dick, isn't he? Abdul Jabbar, what do we expect? Val Leach, Colin McLaren, Eddie Moores, Leanne Munro. She looked at me. She's that young blonde councillor from St. James. She looked at me like, I was some dirt off her shoe. And I was trying to chat her up in a nightclub or something. No, Leanne. If you want to destroy your political career that you just started by being complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children, it won't make no difference. Shahid Mushtaq. Well, we know what's going on there. Umar Nasim. Clint Piffian. Come on, Clint. Kyle Piffian. The father and son combo. Akil Salamat. Graham Shuttleworth. Jean Stretton. Ruji Shurjan. Elaine Taylor. Yasmin Tur. These are gone, aren't they? Yasmin's gone. Steve Williams. Look at the names. If any of these are wrong, I'm afraid this is the council's. It's the council's own list. Why would you? These are the people who are refusing to support a public inquiry. There's the leader, Amanda Chadderton. Point blank refused. I will not support it, she said. Point blank in response to Robert Barnes' question. It's not even the party, mate. It's not even the party. And do you know why it's not even the party? Because when Jim McMahon stood there and did his nonsense on Thursday, no other Labour MP, apart from, whatever her name is, Debbie Cashmere, who's neck deep in this scandal herself, and her political future lies in tatters if we force a public inquiry. No other Labour MP was there with him. Well, if the list is wrong, mate, it's something that Oldham Council needs to update, isn't it? It's not me. You were sat just in front of me, John, weren't you? I'm so pleased he turned up, mate. So pleased he turned up. I'm angry that when I look around, the majority of us who are fighting this are elderly grandmothers. as a fit and able man, I find that really uncomfortable. So I was glad you were there, mate, and I was glad, so, you know, others like Gary and some of the others were there also. David Gidman. If you're finding value, please like, please share. At the very least, like and share. Doesn't cost you anything. Copy and paste it across. So we've got 2 lies out of the way in 2 hours. I will write on this. I will write and publish something on this. The third lie is that Oldham Council was consistently attempting to develop a best practice. So Ridgway Newsom defended Oldham Council by claiming that the council was consistently attempting to develop a best practice. This is a headline from a Rochdale newspaper in 2009. So it kind of predates the arrests. Operation Tackling Sex Abuse expands to Rochdale. Oldham's award-winning Operation Messenger team, set up to tackle sexual exploitation of young girls, is being replicated in Rochdale. I'll read that sentence again. Oldham's award-winning Operation Messenger team, set up to tackle sexual exploitation of young girls, is being replicated in Rochdale. The team was established in 2007 as a collaboration between Greater Manchester Police, social workers, council, children's staff and the charity Bernardo's. In 2008, the Messenger team won the Excellence Award from Greater Manchester's late Chief Constable Michael Todd. So Oldham's award-winning Operation Messenger team, and remember, the claim is Oldham Council was consistently attempting to develop a best practice. I spelled that wrong. I can't find it on here. Anyway, give me a second. Ah, right, because I'm looking in the wrong document. That's why. Greater Manchester Internal Police Review identified that the messenger team was insufficiently resourced during the period to undertake proactive operations. Insufficiently resourced, yet they claim it was award-winning. In December 2006, look how far back it goes. December 2006. Unless you scratch below the surface, you do not realize the enormity of the problem. We are not talking about teenage relationships. These are men in their 20s, 30s and beyond. Each time there has been activity in these areas by ourselves, the problem appears to go away. As we get better, we realize how big the issue is. Of course, they are making reference in as early as December 2006 to the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. The council want to prevent a public inquiry. Why? I think it shows why. How big the issue is. This is the executive director for children, for young people and families. In 2000, this is the executive director. During 2007, in just 1 year, upwards of 30 local young people between the ages of 12 to 16. I don't even know what that means. As someone who wrote reports for a living, I don't even know what that means. What do you mean by upwards of 30? 40, 50, 60, 300? Upwards of 30 means more than 30, doesn't it? Am I, sorry, you know, my English is okay. I think my ability to speak and read and analyze is okay. Upwards of 30 means more than 30. I'm sorry the coffee link isn't working on your phone. There's nothing I can do about that. It's https://buymeacoffee.com/recusant9. I'll type it in for you if you want. I'm right, aren't I? It means more than 30. Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? A government report should not do this. A local government report like this, it should be very specific. Particularly on an issue like this. Not possible to gauge the accuracy of the exact number of children involved in sexual exploitation in Oldham due to the considerable reluctance of victims to reveal information and the hidden nature of the activities of perpetrators. There you go. They won an award. Look how they're talking it up. Look how they're talking it up. And look at this, the first admission of something not quite right. Although Operation Messenger had been running from 2006, it was not until August 29 that a dedicated facility to forward any forward intelligence to the operational policing unit system was created. So for 3 years, and they've won all of these awards, no information was being shared with the police. Apparently the police said there were grey areas. Grey areas, Oldham Eye. Grey areas. We are a small unit and didn't have the capacity to deal with all of these types of vulnerable girls. Here's the first element of ethnicity you'll find in here, hidden in the small print. And this is only what was reported. 9th of September 2009 to the 9th of July 2010. So that's just 1 year. 164 Greater Manchester Police Family Support investigations. 164. 30 arrests. 30 abduction notices. Most offenders were identified as British Asian men. But Eastern European, Middle Eastern and white British men also featured. Just in case. Just in case. Yeah. There was a white one there. There was a white man. White man was there as well. Most offenders were identified as British Asian men. And they're getting higher and higher and higher. Yeah, you can see here. Yet the funding for the original Messenger project was reduced in 2010. Why? Why? Why was the funding reduced? Who decided the funding would be reduced? In August 2019, this is just 1 month, by the way, 29 people were referred into Operation Messenger. In just 1 month. And they throw in the BMP. Our children are not halal meat. Remember the spectre of the far right? We'll get to that at some point. There's this big quote. You won't say who it's from. The minutes clearly articulate the complexity of the issues the Council and Greater Manchester Police were grappling with. There's nothing complex about the issue. It's here. There's nothing complex about that. It's hard to palate, I accept, but it's not complex. There is a need to consider the impact of this issue on Muslim communities as they are feeling demonized. We need to think about the Muslim communities more from which the majority of the perpetrators come from than the victims. That is what they are saying there. Does it make you feel sick? It makes me feel sick. I'm a Muslim. And clearly you can see I'm an Asian man. This makes me feel sick because none of the Muslim men I know want anything to do with this shit. They want these people locked up. Oldham Council was consistently attempting to develop best practice. Operation Messenger in this report is confirmed as being not fit for purpose. Confirmed in this report as being not fit for purpose. Sorry, I can't find it right now, but it's in there. It's confirmed. Operation Messenger was not fit for purpose. So the best practice that they were looking to develop was deemed to be not fit for purpose. So why highlight on the fact that they were attempting to develop best practice? By claiming they were attempting to develop best practice is not a defense. I was attempting to run a clean kitchen, but there's rats in it and rat droppings have not cleaned up. Is not a defense, is it? Yet here, in this so-called assurance review, it is. And then they claim the specialist services were way ahead. Way ahead than who? And being way ahead does not mean you're fit for purpose. If everyone else is shit around you and your defense is we were a little less shit than everyone else, that's nothing to be proud of. And then we get to the fifth one. And in terms of specialist services being way ahead, you've seen who's in charge of those specialist services. The managing director of children and young people in this town is now Gerard Jones. Gerard Jones, well, you've seen, haven't you? I'll get into that. I'll get into that another time. I'm going to call it quits. It's 11:20. I'm exhausted. I'm not even halfway through this. If you find value in these transmissions, please like, please share. Please consider financially supporting me. I'm not sure when I'll come back to finish the rest of it off. I'll try. It won't be tomorrow night. Maybe Tuesday. You can see, I think, the amount of effort that goes into the analysis. And you can see why. Well, I think you can see why that I am, to all extents and purposes, for Greater Manchester Police, Oldham Council and the Labour Party, public enemy number one.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.